We go. We're on. Just a minute or two late. Welcome, everyone. This is a Land Use Committee meeting. We're ready to get started. With us in the chamber, we have some staff members. We have Cassidy Flynn, who is stepping in for Scott Matthews, who's under the weather tonight. From the planning department, we have Katie Wewell and Jen Kyra. We have Jonah Temple from the law department. The city councilors we have present on the land use committee. From Ward 1, Allison Leary is in the chamber. From Ward 2, Tariq Lucas. I'm Andrea Kelly. I'm the chair and I'm from Ward 3. From Ward 5 on Zoom, we have Andrea Downs. From Ward 6, Alan Lobovitz. From Ward 7, President Mark Laredo. And from Ward 8, Stephen Farrell. We have a few other counselors joining us too in the chamber. We have Susan Albright, and on Zoom, at least so far, and I'll continue to introduce people as they filter in. We have Rick Liphoff and Raina Getz. I think that's everyone. So we only have one thing on our agenda tonight, which is number 7-25, which is a proposal for an amendment to a previously granted special permit for Northland. First, we're going to hear from the Northland team. Mr. Schlesinger, do you want to start it off?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Alan Schlesinger, Schlesinger and Bookbinder, 1200 Walnut Street. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. In anticipation of this hearing, you have received a number of communications, including a response memo dated April 8th from Northland, which spoke to 9 specific issues raised by councilors at or after the March 25 hearing. You also received an analysis from the planning department summarizing some of the responses and providing a draft of a council order. In the responses we provided, I want to note a couple in particular that the committee asked for, and with more information about the initial transportation demand management work plan and operation of the proposed shuttle. It might be useful to review some of the terms used in the council order, which are also set forth in the planning department memo. Based upon the limited scope of the program modifications in this petition, the drafting choice was made to leave the original findings and the original conditions in place with supplemental findings as to the changing and amendments as necessary to the conditions to reflect changes in the product. In the draft order, which planning will present, as in the prior order, conditions 59 through 66 deal with traffic demand management, mitigation, measurements, and enforcement. Condition 64.
Recording in progress.
Oh, thank you. Condition 64 requires Northland to prepare a transportation demand management work plan based upon the October 19th, 2019 draft plan. That plan must be approved by and not amended without the consent of the planning director. And it's a document which lays out the phase-in measures, the public transit incentives, and the implementations of the plan over time. It is intended as a work in progress, interpreting or advancing the requirements of the council order while providing flexibility as to means and methods. At your request, a revised and updated TDM work plan marked from the October 19 order version was included in our response and in your memo. The revised draft TDM work plan also references that the office spaces were deleted, the form of T-Pass subsidy was updated, and the shuttle service was spelled out as we had previously suggested, with a schedule of 3.5 hours in the morning, commuter period, and 3.5 hours in the evening period, with the timing of those windows to be adjusted to maximize usage. We want to emphasize that the TDM work plan as a whole, and the shuttle in particular, are tools designed to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips on Needham Street. And as to the shuttle, this proposal is our consultant's best judgment of how to do that. Transaction Associates believes it will be successful, while Northland is committed to initiating the shuttle as proposed. It may be that other hours, additional hours, Saturday hours, or pre-Christmas hours may be tried, they may fail, they may succeed, and we're committed to an active review with planning and revisions of all elements of the work plan. The goal is to get results, and we should be prepared. It means that methods will change over time. Parking is another area of active review. As we have noted, the ratio of parking for retail spaces has been increased modestly in this proposal. However, we do have to prepare for success, particularly in the holiday season. So the project has been approved for a valet parking capacity of 250 cars, managed season or overflow, if any. The underlying obligations remain in the council order conditions. In your packet, you have received revised sets of findings. And again, the prior conditions. Most of the changes are for conformity as the plan and program changes. As noted in the planning department analysis and the traffic remediation conditions 60 through 63, they impose strict trip generation limits, hard limits on the project, and detailed prescriptions for trip count monitoring every 6 months to continue for at least 5 years after the project is half completed, and indefinitely if the trip reduction goals are not met. Condition 65 provides that if the trip count maximum is exceeded, Northland will invest funds towards implementation of the work plan, which is called the TDM investment amount. As written in the prior order, the amount of the TDM investment amount was measured by the anticipated cost of the shuttle at that time, $1,500,000. That amount has been found to be impractical and out of scale and scope of the project and the TDM program. The current proposal is to change the TDM investment amount to equal the estimated cost of the current shuttle program, now $200,000. Condition 65 also provides a proportionate escalation mechanism if the targets are still not made after the TDM investment amount. And under condition 65A3, there remains no maximum cap on the petitioner's additional investment obligation. There is no cap. Another element of our response of April 8th, which we wish to emphasize, is as to the possibility of additional commercial space at the site. It's important to note that the project has been master planned to be fully constructed as an integrated development. Beyond the completion of the proposed plan, we wrote that, quote, if in the future there is a viable plan to add to the project and recapture the commercial space or further improve the project in some way, Northland would certainly consider a further petition to the council. There is no additional plan, nothing in concept other than an open mind. Also, and significantly in the April 8th response, Northland offered to change one additional 3-bedroom unit to be from a market unit to a tier 1 inclusionary unit, increasing the number of affordable 3-bedroom units to 8. Mayor David Cohen used to celebrate some receipt or grant of money with a 3 by 5 foot cardboard facsimile of a bank draft. And he would say many times that he was presenting a really big check. I laughed every time. It is April 15th. If this petition is approved, Northland would hope to get the building permit for Building 3 in 2025 and have a really big check of over $6 million in permit and mitigation fees with that building permit. It is a payment Northland would make enthusiastically. Finally, I want to thank over 50 citizens of Newton who have written to you in the past weeks in support of this project. Many of the letters wrote from recognition of the change in market conditions over the past 5 years. Many wrote in support of housing generally, and many wrote in particular support of the 145 inclusionary housing units, which will make this development Newton's largest affordable housing development. We are grateful to the efforts and support of the Economic Development Commission, Newton for Everyone, Green Newton, the League of Women Voters, and all of the individuals who have spoken and written so eloquently in support of this project. And we thank the members of this committee, the other councilors here tonight, for your considerable attention to this petition.
Thank you, Mr. Schlesinger. We have been joined on Zoom by a few other counselors, so I welcome John Oliver, Julia Malicki, Maria Greenberg, and Pam Wright to this meeting. Next, we'll hear from the Planning Department.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will share my screen with our presentation. Okay, so we have, we're back here tonight for petition 7-25 for 400 Main Street. As we have covered over the last few months, the changes to this project include a reduction of 5 buildings from the site plan, almost entirely eliminating the office use from the site that was previously approved, an increase of 22 residential units resulting in 822 residential units, with 145 of them being designated as affordable units. The project maintains 96,061 square feet of retail space, and the project also swaps previously approved buildings 9 through 12 for a proposed 124 stall surface parking facility. The city's peer reviewer, Camoin Associates, presented at the March 25th Land Use Committee meeting highlights of their market or fiscal analysis and subsequent report find that overall, the revised project will still provide an overall net positive of approximately $1.8 million annually to the city. Camoin was tasked with an analysis of the viability of the area's office market. Reasons why office is no longer suitable for this site are that there is a weak demand for office as well as an oversupply of office space. There is 610,000 square feet of available Class A, which is premium office space within 2 miles of this site. When looking at similar mill buildings, which was previously approved as office, there is approximately 263,000 square feet of available space, likely in the Class B category. And overall, Camoin's analysis reinforces that the declining office market and that this is an opportune moment to rethink programming of the site before there's any vertical construction underway that would leave office space underutilized or worse, vacant. Beta, the peer reviewer for the city, who is here tonight, Dennis, reviewed the petitioner's traffic impact and access study. Overall, the trip generation for the site is decreasing with the elimination of almost the entire office use that was approved. The Mass DOT Needham Street improvements are intended to improve traffic safety and operations and multimodal accommodation. This will help address some of the areas identified in the vicinity of the site with a higher than average crash rate. The petitioner also submitted a revised TDM plan, including updates to the shuttle operations, which reflect residential commuting patterns. And they also proposed to modify the investment amount of $200,000, where $1.5 million was previously approved based on costs to run the shuttle. And this comes into play should they exceed the maximum trips allowed for the site, which is set forth in the order. Planning recommended the TDM plan should consider more retail employees as eligible for the subsidized transit passes, not just the full-time employees. The revised project results in increased open space as well as an additional surface parking facility. NBBJ reviewed this overall site plan and corresponded with the petitioner on some thoughts or questions. And overall, NBBJ is satisfied with all of the petitioner's responses to their questions and concerns. A counselor did raise the question about wind studies. So when we asked NBBJ about, the need for a wind study, NBBJ pointed out that those are typically done for taller, irregular shaped buildings and coastal developments that are more impacted by wind. So review of the stormwater consisted of site work done thus far and the installation of stormwater management systems. Horsley Witten and the development team's engineering firm, VHB, worked together to understand changes to stormwater systems and confirm that what has been installed is consistent with the approved plans. So their review and subsequent responses have also been satisfactorily addressed. So in summary, planning and the peer reviewers are satisfied with the responses provided by the petitioner. And as directed by the chair, a draft order was included in the Friday packet for consideration by the committee. So that concludes the planning presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wewell. I'm just going to mention we've been joined now by the city's Economic Development Director, John Sisson, who's in the chamber. And speaking of economic development, as you know, we have an Economic Development Commission, which is a city-appointed body to look into economic development-related matters. And someone would like to speak on their behalf and tell their perspective on this project. Would you like to just come to the microphone, Jane? When you get there, just be sure that it's turned on the base and just give us your name and address.
Jane O'Baggy, can you hear me?
I think so. Try again.
Jane O'Baggy, 28 Lenox Street, the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Commission. I'm here on behalf of the commission to read you a letter that we recently sent to the City Council councilors. And I'm not sure because there's so many names on the list. One of my fellow commissioners may be on the line, but I can't see because there's so many. Phil, if you're on the line, just raise your hand and we'll. Okay, we sent this letter on April 11th, 2025. Dear Honorable City Councilors, the Economic Development Commission is pleased to provide this letter on the proposed changes to the Northland project on Needham Street. We would like to thank the Northland for presenting updates to the EDC this year and in the years preceding issuance of the 2019 special permit. We also appreciate the city's diligence in evaluating Northland's proposed changes and potential impacts on tax revenues, city services, environmental conditions, stormwater management, and transportation. The EDC expressed its support of the commercial components of Northland's project in a letter submitted to the City Council on September 11, 2019. At our meeting on April 8th, 2025, the commission discussed the project as approved in 2019 and the revised project as proposed in 2025. The EDC adopted the following position by a vote of 10-0. We acknowledge that the commercial real estate market conditions changed considerably since the pandemic. And as was presented in the Camone Associates Report, Economic Review of Northland Newton Development Project on March 18th, 2025. The approved 2019 plan included 193,200 square feet of commercial office and 115,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space. The revised 2025 plan almost entirely eliminates the office component and reduces the retail and restaurant space to 96,000 square feet. As we encourage the City Council to advance the special permit approval of this amended project, the EDC would recommend the following provisions be added. The applicant should be allowed to build in place of a proposed residential building up to 93,200 square feet of commercial development as of right, consistent with the approved current plan and subject to review by the Planning Department and the Planning and Development Board. The applicant shall be allowed to incorporate up to 115,000 total square feet of retail and restaurant space as of right, consistent with the approved current site plan and subject to review by the Planning Department and the Planning and Development Board. These provisions create a clear and direct path for Northland to respond to upward shifts in the commercial real estate market as they develop the property, with the macro goal of creating more long-term activity and value to the city. Broadly, if the city has a goal of increasing commercial development, then it should make the process of developing commercial property faster, easier, cheaper, and more predictable. In conclusion, we would echo the final recommendation the EDC made in its 2019 letter. The future projects along the Needham Street corridor prioritize commercial development. Thank you for your consideration of our comments. We advise the City Council to approve the special permit amendment and with due consideration of the recommendations above. Now that was a mouthful. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain those.
Thank you for being available for that. Some members of the public or city councilors might have questions about the EDC's perspective. Mr. Sisson, do you want to sit up here with your colleagues, or are you happy on the uncomfortable bench? Okay. Thank you. Okay. No, I just want, you're an important city staff person. You have a right to sit up here too, and there may be questions addressed to you also. Okay, so this is our third meeting on this proposed amendment. This amendment is mainly around changing uses from commercial to residential and how those changes affect traffic, parking, open space, et cetera. You've heard most of those things tonight. We're not deliberating on the previously approved changes that were granted in 2019 through the previous special permit. We are focusing just on the changes that this amendment proposes. As we've also heard from both the Northland team and the planning department, we've had many professional consultant reports, reviews, analyses, and peer reviews that have been presented and prepared for us on traffic, transportation, market and economic analysis, infrastructure, stormwater, urban design, and tax revenue. They have been numerous and thorough. I just want to state that as a piece of the record of where we are tonight. So now I'm going to open the public hearing. If there are people in the chamber who would like to speak, you can line up behind the microphone. If you're on Zoom and would like to speak, raise either your virtual hand at the bottom of your screen or raise your hand. I will say that we will hear from each speaker once and for 3 minutes. So first, Nadine Cohen.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Nadine Cohen. I live at 28 Fisher Avenue in Newton Highlands, and I'm here to briefly urge the committee and the city council to approve Northland's revisions and move forward with the housing at Northland. In these difficult political times, Newton has the opportunity to do the right thing and move forward with Northland without further delay. While it may not be perfect in every aspect for every person, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This project has been in the works, as we know, for many, many years. The special permit was approved 5 years ago. It's been approved by the voters of Newton in a citywide referendum. It has been vetted by the city council, the planning department, consultants, and Newton residents. Now is the time to get it done. And I think I just want to note that, as the chair said, we're only considering the amendments, and this should not be an opportunity to reopen a review of the entire project. We all know that the need for housing is critical, and Newton has to step up and do its part to address the housing crisis. Many current Newton residents, including seniors, are looking for housing opportunities to remain in the community. We can all find things about the project we wish were better: more parking, better access to the T, more commercial space, more open space, more affordable units. But we can all agree that this housing is needed, and we need it now. We often say justice delayed is justice denied. We can also say housing delayed is housing denied. As Martin Luther King said, it is always the right time to do the right thing. I urge you to do what is right and finally approve the Northland project and get the housing built. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cohen. Jay Walter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do support the application from Northland Newton Development. They have been open and thoughtful throughout this review process. The City Council should not hold up the project any longer. Although the reduction in commercial and office space is regrettable, the market prevails, and I think we are going to get more housing. And housing is a good thing. We need it as soon as possible. And I urge the council to vote in favor of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Come up. Well, there was somebody standing up first, and then Mr. Powdermaker right behind her.
Good evening, Julie Irish, 8 Columbia Avenue, Newton Upper Falls. I'm here on behalf of the Upper Falls Area Council. I know you received several letters from us over the past few months outlining our concerns, but I know tonight's discussion is mainly around the loss of commercial space, but I just want to remind everyone of our concerns so it doesn't get lost in that. And I know there've been a lot of reports and consultants and peer reviews, but I just want to remind you folks about the Upper Falls community and what we're most concerned about. And I know you've heard this before. I'm only going to take really 30 seconds of your time to remind you of the entrance on Oak Street. And if I'd like to refer to the March 24th letter to please read the details about that. And again, parking, the reduction in parking is also an issue and how that we're concerned about the spillover into the neighborhoods. Third, the loading area of the deliveries, the traffic sort of flow and around vehicles delivering. It's a different time nowadays with a lot of deliveries, a lot of Ubers, and it's just different from what it was when it was Activus, when Clark's was there. So I just want to remind everyone it's a different time. And these are the concerns that, among others, but these are the ones that really will impact the daily lives of the Upper Falls community. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irish. And yes, we have received your letters, including your most recent one I think of today. But as I think you heard me and others say, it's not just the change of use from commercial to residential, it's all of the consequences in terms of traffic and parking, some of the things you touched on that we consider too. So thank you very much. Mr. Powdermaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. I'm Dan Powdermaker, 119 Lincoln Street, and I'm one of the founders of Newton for Everyone, an organization that is encouraging our elected officials to address in a significant fashion the housing crisis here in Newton, the housing shortage that I think we all are well aware of. Newton for Everyone supports the Northland's request for an amendment to the special permit. Special permit was granted in 2020 that was then put to a referendum by the voters and overwhelmingly approved. The new plan reflects new realities that we think are indisputable. The commercial office market is in a lot of trouble, and to try to force or hold over the head of a developer a non-viable construction plan, is something that we find troubling. The revised project has a smaller impact, or will have a smaller impact on the neighborhood than the original. It will generate significantly less traffic. It reduces the density and the scale and the environmental impact of the total project. And these were all key issues that opponents of the original plan raised. So there is a gain if we step back and look at the opposition 5 years ago. They're getting a lot of what they were trying to get when they put the project to a referendum. The new plan provides a modest increase in housing, which is a plus, some additional affordable units. It has a majority of 1, 2, and studio units, which are highly desirable by the bookends of adulthood, young people and older people. So we view that as a real positive. And we urge this committee and the whole council to approve the amendments and not further delay the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jack, you can come to the microphone, but I see Councillor Lobovitz had his hand up, so I'm just going to ask later we'll get to you when we come to the councillors. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Jack Neville, 68 High Street, Newton Upper Falls. So I'm not here to speak against housing. I understand that land has to be developed, and I understand that. I'm not arguing that point. The only two items I have are the 300 parking spaces have to stay. How are you going to run that operation? Where they're going to park? Upper Falls is already jammed, so I would ask the councilors to really consider, keep that in the program, that the ones they want to eliminate. And then my second issue is always the Condon Lane on Oak Street, that it's a two-way now, but I didn't want it originally, but it's there. So the area council, which I'm on, we discussed it for hours, how to handle it. And we thought that maybe the best way to handle it now is to have only an entrance into the property. That's going to be such a congestion between the depot, the lights, the other lights. I mean, it's going to be really tough. And then Oak Street itself. I worked on Oak Street in the 1960s. I was a McGregor warehouse that I worked there one summer, and that was an industrial area then. Across the street was Stowe Woodward, a rubber factory. I worked in that factory. I actually went up and ate in the commissary room there. But I did work there. So, I mean, it's altogether different now. So anything you can keep off Oak Street because it's a thoroughfare. Oak Street is a thoroughfare. So those are my items. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. And after this speaker, I'm going to take a few on Zoom and then I'll come back to the room. Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Lisa Monahan. I live at 1105 Walnut Street in Newton Highlands. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm writing to ask the Land Use Committee and City Council to support the proposed amendments. Given the current market for commercial office space, it's a wise pivot for the development team to ask permission to amend the permit and eliminate the commercial office space part of the program. We're all going to benefit from a financially successful project. Newton desperately needs more housing, and at the same time, we need to support our stellar school system. Approving this proposed amendment will fill a housing need and help our schools at the same time. These two topics go together like a hand in glove. We need more housing for young families. This has been something that has been so out of reach for so many in the past decade. Our schools need more students to counter declining enrollments of recent years if we want to maintain the levels of education that Newton is known for, and that many of us have been drawn to for over the decades. Next generations deserve to live here and be educated here as our children have. Besides helping housing and school challenges, this project will add incredible vibrancy to Newton Upper Falls with dedicated retail, restaurant space, free shuttle service to public transportation. The outdoor spaces proposed by the amendments will create even more lush green spaces and plant more trees. The time is right to approve this thoughtful project and get it built. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Monahan. I'm going to go to the next two people who have hands up on Zoom, which will be Lynn Weisberg, followed by M. Ward, and then I'll come back to the room. Ms. Weisberg?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chair Kelly. My name is Lynn Weisberg. I live at 5 Alden Street. I have spoken in favor of this project as amended previously and will not repeat those remarks. I join with all of the speakers tonight who have spoken in favor of the project. You have all the information before you that you need to make a decision tonight. You have the market analysis, you have the reports from all of the peer reviewers, and although some counselors might believe that there's a need for yet further information, I would ask you to reach a vote tonight because it is time for a vote to be made. The last thing I want to mention is a huge thank you to Councillor Greenberg for asking for an additional affordable unit, and not just any unit, but a 3-bedroom unit. So thank you to Councillor Greenberg for making that request, and an even larger thank you to Northland for granting that request. We are delighted that there will be not only one additional affordable unit, but a 3-bedroom at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Weisberg. M. Ward?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Margaret Ward, 957 Washington Street. I want to speak about the peer review on the economic analysis of the office market. Firstly, Ms. Kyra's explanation of the process, in her explanation, she indicated that upon the initial analysis, that there was an opportunity for response by Northland and for the peer reviewer to review those responses. So in consideration of that, I'm wondering if there were any edits made to the initial report prepared by Camon Associates before this report was finally presented to the public. I say this, or I ask this question because this report comes off as an excuse for the developer not to commit to office space rather than a truly objective evaluation on the future trend for return to office. And I wonder if that is because the developer is funding this peer review. So to list a few gaps or deficiencies that I found in this market assessment, one, the analysis seems to be a little bit misdirected, focusing on comparisons to pre-pandemic levels. Historical analysis adds no value. We already know the office market has tanked. We know that there's a bunch of vacancies. I think the general expectation is that there will be several years before return to office, it will be at pre-pandemic level, if at all. But we are in some kind of recovery, and this analysis fails to hone in on that. Return to office in Boston is higher than the national average. We know this to be true. It's been reported by multiple media sources. Why is this the case? What makes Boston or Massachusetts so unique? Again, a big omission in their report. Furthermore, there was no analysis focusing on the return from remote to hybrid schedule. There's a lot of this happening. I'm hearing this anecdotally. My friend who works in human resources outsourcing company says that there's a lot of companies sitting on real estate and they need to make a decision, right? Either they start utilizing their real estate or they need to downsize their footprint. And then that's the case, then they're going to look to downsize. Again, more market activity happening. So lastly, this report does not mention any updates on current state legislation or incentives to help businesses to recover in our area. What this report does mention, however, more than once, is that any demand for office space will happen in amenity-rich locations, which is exactly the Northland project. So what is our strategy to tap into this recovering return to office market? Again, I look to our Department of Economic Development.
Ms. Wood, could you please wrap up?
Sure, absolutely. The Department of Economic Development says that they're supposed to be connecting commercial property owners to potential tenants. And that sounds very action-oriented. And I would say that hiring a peer review to give us information that we already know about office vacancies is not action-oriented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've attended enough meetings that I know that you know that public comment is not a back and forth conversation. However, let me assure you that your comments and questions, as well as other people's, are being noted by the development team and our city staff here. And if there's going to be a response, we're going to give them a time for that, but that will not be right this second.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Just wanted to clarify for everyone. Thank you. Come forward.
Hello, I'm Esther Schlorholtz, and I'm at 63 Smith Avenue in West Newton. And I want you to know that I urge you to move forward now without further delays. I did provide written request of this, and so I don't want to repeat that, but I do want to mention that this is a project that will provide a lot of value to Newton. It is one that if we don't do, it will leave a vacant, unproductive site, harming the community. It will, on the good side, it will help provide a vibrant neighborhood, tax revenue, economic growth, job opportunities, and encourage growth in local businesses as well with jobs. I have over 40 years of experience in government, nonprofit, and banking, including real estate and small business financing. And this is the worst time to delay on a project like this. This is one that should move forward. The office market is not coming back for a long time, if ever. And this project will provide enormous benefits, to say nothing of the housing provided and the affordable housing. I'm also the chair of Newton's Fair Housing Committee, and I want to add that the benefits of building this housing, including the 145 moderate income households, provide great value and opportunity for people that otherwise would not have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schlerholtz. Next up.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Honorable City Council, staff. I'm Deb Crossley. I live at 26 Circuit Avenue in Newton. I spoke with you at the first meeting. Generally, I've been following all of your discussions and all the material online. I guess I want to start by saying, in my 10 years serving on the Land Use Committee, among all the developers who came before us, I found this developer, Northland, by far to be the most thoughtful and the most responsive of all the folks we worked with. And that continues to this day with what I've observed during these hearings. At the last hearing, I was pleased to hear nearly all of the counselors acknowledging the difficult situation that we're in and understanding the reasons why this developer has come forward with a proposed amendment, which I believe is hardest for them to do. It's a smaller project, as we all understand. But I have to say too that I think it's disingenuous for the few who are to pretend to feign concern over less tax revenue from this smaller project than from the 2019 approved, much larger plan, a difference of 160,000 square feet in total. With no, when the opposition then in 2019 centered around traffic and density, if the developer cannot entice investors to move this project forward, there will be no tax revenue, nor the multiple tangible monetary benefits that still come with this proposal. And most importantly, there will be no housing at this site for the foreseeable future. And that would be a darn shame, a really sad thing for Newton. At an event this afternoon, when our mayor was being awarded a Fair Housing Award, true to form, she accepted the award by thanking everybody else in the room and talking about how it takes a team to push a project forward, but also how it still takes too long to push a project forward. She mentioned the Armory starting in 2019, and still there's not a single person living there. So I want to echo those who have urged the council to move as swiftly as possible. Tonight would be a great night to take a vote and move the council order forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crossley. Come up. Yes, you're next.
Sean Roach, 42 Daniel Street, Main. Took 9 seconds off already. Wow. Housing. I'm here, as so many others are, because of the 822 units. We clearly need the affordable units. We also need the market rate units. And there is little doubt that this Northland project will put downward pressure on existing real estate inventory. I only need point us down the street to the Avon, just under 300 units. Only 7 of them are available right now. Having additional units down the street is going to put pressure on the Avon to lower their rents as well as any other housing in the area. What we're really talking about, I think the housing benefits are obvious. Numerous speakers have talked about, and what we're really talking about is the objections, traffic and parking, and the commercial office space. Traffic's obviously going to go down relative to the original plan as approved. The concerns about traffic and parking are in tension, and it really is incumbent on the folks on the city council who should know this to make clear that adding more parking is going to induce more traffic. So the plan to put additional surface level spaces is not going to be good for traffic. And so it's just a bad idea. I will continue to, there was some discussion today about overflow parking for holidays. Needham Street has a surplus of parking. Got to find a way to do valet parking on existing spaces. It'd be so much better use of money and space and not add additional parking that's going to induce more traffic. And then I'll make the request that I've made over and over again, which is a really fundamental, valuable thing that this development could do would be to add the ability to collect data on performance of Needham Street using existing Bluetooth tracking technology like what you see on the Pike. As for commercial office space, is a great frustration for all of us, but we cannot visit the frustration of the market on this particular developer. Councilor Lucas, I heard you last session, and I share your frustration. It would have been great to have office space in the mill building, but if there were an economic opportunity here, I think the greedy folks, the developers, would have taken that opportunity. Clearly, the opportunity isn't there. I kid about the greedy part. Thank you.
You have 4 seconds to spare. No. Thank you, Mr. Was there someone? Yes, come forward, please. I thought I saw another person back there.
Hi, my name is Paula Daly Kelleher. I live on Elliott Terrace in Upper Falls.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Closer. Yeah. My name is Paula Daly Kelleher. I live on Elliott Terrace in Upper Falls. The traffic on Needham Street is problematic for a project this size. And one of the things Northland promised was one of their solutions was to provide a shuttle bus. So that's concerning because the Lexus bus failed. And when Northland submitted their revisions to the most recent special permit, one of the things they said they're going to do away with the shuttle bus because of the elimination of office space. But now it's back in again. And this is concerning because Upper Falls feels, and rightly so, that parking is going to overflow into Upper Falls. And we're already on crowded old streets that lack parking for residents. And now to have these 800 rental units looking for parking is going to be a burden to us. Also, I'd like to point out that the parking is not included in the rentals, and it's 1.8 spaces per unit. And that's not enough. And I would ask that they, at the very minimum, increase parking. Because of all the concerns with traffic and with the impact of schools, all the other services, 800 is already a lot. Please don't add on any more than 800 units. We would really appreciate it to have a reduction, but at the very minimum, please don't add on 800, add to that number. I'd also like to remind the City Council that the Village Center Overlay District project was voted down by voters. They don't want the increased densities. The MBTA Act was different. That's been approved and because we didn't want to restrict any funds. But residents Newton residents, all Newton residents don't want overcrowding in their villages. So I asked you to keep that in mind as well. And in fact, the voters spoke about the village center overlay, and the counselors, the 3 counselors that were very much in favor of that are no longer city councilors. So that was a very large speaking voice for the city of Newton.
Thank you, Ms. Kelleher. Thanks so much. Back to Zoom. Jan Stir is the name on the Zoom name.
I don't know how that happened, but I'll go by that tonight. This is Janster,
You
Janet
can-
Sturman.
You can change that yourself to reflect what you really want to.
I must have done that inadvertently. I know. I did not do that on purpose. I can promise you that much. So I've already wasted 15 seconds talking about baloney. So I just want to make a couple comments about, I'm always so incited when I hear the public speak about how, with all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, there's already a hole in the ground here. Northland is ready to start building. There's no reason that whether this gets approved, this change or not, this project is going to happen or not, because they're going to build this project. There's just a question of whether they're going to build this commercial space as they promised they were going to do initially or not. And I'm so glad that Newton for Everyone overwhelmingly approves this change. And Nadine Cohn says, do the right thing. We're already doing the right thing. We're building a ton of residential housing already. And there's no reason why we have to negate the need for, based on the fear, there might not be a marketable space for this developer for commercial space. I think the need is there, it is growing, and everyone has a different opinion. But the most important thing to remember, and I'm hoping you will all remember this, is that years ago when we were considering the Austin Street parking lot, and somebody asked you to take this under consideration, and that is for everyone on the city council to have a little bit of courage. What makes a king out of a slave? Courage. What makes the flag on the mast to wave? Courage. What makes the elephant charge his tusk in the misty mist or the dusky dusk? What makes the muskrat guard his musk? Courage. What makes the Sphinx the seventh wonder? Courage. What makes the dawn come up like thunder? Courage. What makes the Hottentot so hot? What puts the ape in apricot? What have they got that I ain't got? Courage. So I'm asking the city council to have the courage to make this petitioner stick to the promises they made to us that we already went through so much controversial discussion about this. There's no need to make this change. We need the commercial tax revenue. And even though Ms. Crossley said there's not going to be any housing or any tax revenue, that's baloney. It's going to happen as soon as you show us you have the courage to make the developers stand up for what they promised they were going to deliver in the first place.
Thank you,
And
Ms.
I
Stern.
appreciate the courage that you exercise in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public, either in the chamber or on Zoom? And if not, we're going to bring this into the Land Use Committee for some deliberating. We received quite a lot of materials in response to many of our questions before. If you have further questions for the consultants or for our staff members, please speak up. If possible, I'll just ask the committee members and any other counselors who might want to speak, if you can think about it ahead of time and prepare your questions in advance so you don't need to speak multiple times, that will be helpful. Let me just ask, Planning, do you want to address any of the questions that came from the public, or would you rather do that at the end with, yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to address a couple of the items that came up. One that I think is really important is our peer review process. So I know one of the comments questioned whether or not one of our peer reviewers, Camoin, edited their study in response to the developer. I want to assure everyone that is not the case. When I spoke at the last meeting that there had been time leading up into the meeting for some back and forth, that meant for the peer reviewers to produce those reports, which were published, and then for the applicant to provide a response memo, which was also published. So while there is that back and forth, it plays out in a public way. And never have we had a peer reviewer review or edit a report with the developer prior to publishing. While the developer funds the peer reviews, it is all comes through the city, and the developer does not have any review power or control over what the peer reviewers say. So I thought that was important just to state publicly. The one other thing that I know is brought up a couple of times and may come up again as part of the discussion is the Oak Street entrance. This was studied thoroughly at the previous go-around with the project approved in 2019. And removing or restricting access at Oak Street and not having a two-way access there does not change the number of vehicles on Oak Street. You still have the same number of cars coming down Oak Street, but it makes the Oak and Needham Street intersection even worse because those vehicles now have to go through that intersection to get down Oak Street. But we're available for any other questions that may come up as part of the committee discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for those clarifications. Mr. Schlesinger, did you want to address any of the public comment things now, or would you rather do it later after you hear comments from the Land Use Committee also?
Don't need to add anything, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to give you the chance in case you wanted to do some quick wrap up. Okay, again, we're going to take this into committee now. Councilor Lobovitz.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to acknowledge that this is a very difficult decision. So many factors going into this. I am particularly encouraged by the increase in affordable housing that was pointed out, particularly for younger people and for older. Somebody said the two sides of the spectrum or both sides of the spectrum. I think that's really important for the city. I don't know about the opportunity for commercial space. I can see both sides, but we don't have a crystal ball. And I think we have to move forward with what we're presented with and not try to guess what the market will be. I'd rather have something that's more certain than something that's less certain. So as you can see, overall, I'm in favor of the project. But I do want to make a few remarks about it, or questions, I would say, or recommendations.
Please go ahead.
First of all, I do also want to acknowledge Councilor Greenberg's suggestion that resulted in more affordable units. I think that was terrific, very creative, and I wanted to thank her for that. I think, as was pointed out also, that there is this tension between parking and traffic. I'm convinced that if we can make public transportation, biking, and other walking pedestrian access accessible enough to people. I do favor less parking than more parking. And that gets to the point that I want to make about the shuttle service. I think it's critical that that shuttle service exists, and that we maximize the use of that shuttle service in every way that we can. So I wanted to suggest some additional wording to the transportation demand management section on the shuttle service. I've been assured that the developer, that Northland wants to maximize the usage of this as much as possible. And I think there are ways that would encourage the maximization, if you will. And that's what I wanted to suggest, why I wanted to suggest some additional wording to that paragraph on the shuttle service. I do take their word for it that they do want to maximize it. The only alternative would be not to, and then show that it wasn't really being utilized, and therefore save $200,000. I know that money matters, and $200,000 is a fair amount of money. So to encourage maximal utilization so that the shuttle service is sort of, if you will, justified by the numbers. I wanted to, as I said, make a few suggestions. I think it would be most appropriate added at the end of the shuttle service paragraph, if the committee and the developers would consider this. So I'll read what I wanted to insert there, and I would appreciate of course, the comments from Mr. Schlesinger or whoever else would want to comment on
Can you
this.
just let us know what number of the conditions you're referring to so that we can
I don't have
follow?
it in front of me, so I apologize. It's under shuttles. There's only one, I think, one paragraph on, could somebody pull that up? So sorry, I didn't realize that I had to refer to that, the number.
We are going to go through the conditions one by one, so if,
As I understand it, this is not a condition. Is that correct? I just spoke to Mrs. Caro about that.
Yes, I think this makes sense to be added to the TDM work plan if there's going to be language around shuttle operations.
So
And
that's what I'm going to recommend. But again, if there's a better way to express this in a different place, I'm
it
certainly open to
would
that.
either be helpful for you to tell us now, but you don't have what we're looking at. I think we're talking about number 64.
No,
Oh.
and we can work on pulling it up. It's the TDM work plan that is referenced in the order and is a separate document. It was part of the response that Northland submitted that was also attached to planning's memo. And that's more of the sort of living document that can be adjusted depending on the results of the trip monitoring.
And do you think it might involve change of wording in the conditions or not? So it won't come
I
up
don't think
then?
so.
Okay, so how are we going to handle Counselor Lobovitz's concern? You know what he's talking about, it sounds like.
Yes, I think if this is something the committee wants to move forward with, I don't know if the best process is for Northland to add it to their document as part of the TDM work plan, and then we have a revised document that gets referenced.
Councilor President Laredo, is it on this point that you were raising your hand?
I just want to address this particular point. Madam Chair, just in terms of process, I think it'd be helpful for us to go through the conditions one by one on the screen so we can identify.
We're going to do that next.
Let me just then comment on what Councilor Lovitz is suggesting. The work plan, as I understand it, and I can be corrected here, is just a plan that's subject to change. A change by the developer, correct?
With approval from the Planning and Public Works.
So if Councilor Lobovitz feels that his changes are such that they're not just subject to discretionary decision-making by planning in conjunction with the developer, then you put it in the conditions so it's quite clear what the intent is. And I don't know what the nature of Councilor Lobovitz's changes are, and maybe it can be twofold, kind of an overarching amendment to a condition to make clear the intent, but providing some flexibility in the work plan to carry it out. But I leave it to the chair as we go through this to do this. But just changing the work plan, that's not a condition. I think we need to be very clear about that.
I just want to be sure that we hear and accommodate Councilor Lobovitz's concern in a way before it becomes too late. If we get to conditions, it's not one of the conditions. I want to know how we can try and address that right now. Mr. Schlesinger, are you standing to speak to this?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you.
The TDM work plan is a document which sits outside of the council order, although the council order does make reference to it as existing and states that it can't be amended without the planning director and other department heads. So I agree with Councilor Laredo in that. I think the work plan is the implementation of the policies established in the conditions. In particular, the conditions establish the maximum trip count and the monitoring of that and several of the mandatory by council order items. And I agree with Councilor Laredo that the TDM work plan, the implementation has been more flexible so that it doesn't have to come back to the council for a special permit amendment if there's a change in some of the MBTA passes or the shuttle schedule or something. I think that our sense was that micromanaging the hours of the shuttle is not a function for the proper function, useful function for the council. But if it could be done by the various department heads, then that would be an efficient way to manage the implementation.
Councilor Lobovitz, I was unclear, obviously, at first. I thought you were talking about one of the conditions that related to the TDM management plan. But as I'm understanding it now, this is a separate document which is outside the purview and authority of the city council. So I'm not really sure the best way for you to be heard on your concerns. Did you have, after all what you've heard,
Well,
do you have a suggestion?
Again, if in the wisdom of the committee, the wording of a condition can be changed in some way to reflect the intent, that would be wonderful. But I'm not at this point at the suggestion of planning suggesting a change in the conditions. But if in our wisdom we think that that should be done to reflect this, by all means, I think we should try to do that.
Okay, that's something within our power. And what we are going to do when we finish hearing from the land use committee members is we are going to go through the conditions, the findings first and the conditions, focusing on the ones that involve the amendment. And if you see one that relates to what you think needs to be changed, you will speak up.
Well, maybe I should state what I wanted to add and then because people will need to
Yes.
reference that in order to decide whether a condition
Please
should
go
be
ahead.
changed. Thank you. So Northland will make good faith efforts to maximize ridership usage by 1, adjusting pickup and drop-off points, 2, adjusting hours of service, 3, engaging with local nonprofit entities, and 4, engaging with local businesses with options for cost sharing. That's it.
Okay,
And then I have one other thing to say.
sure.
on it.
Go ahead while you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Sure. Again, I'd welcome any suggestions on the conditions to reflect what I said before. I wanted to reference the letter that was submitted, I guess it was today, by Miss Irish concerning the delivery situation. And I would appreciate a response from Attorney Schlesinger or anyone else who wants to respond to this. So just to highlight the points that she made in her letter, this concern about the delivery obstructing sidewalks, creating traffic issues as trucks usually, I guess in the past, had backed into the loading area, and that Oak Street is a narrow road. So any truck backing in or pulling out would stop traffic in both directions. In the past, I guess there was access to delivery behind the building. And so that's apparently not going to happen. So that puts even more pressure on the existing delivery site. And a concern about delivery vehicles double parking. So I just wondered if that could be addressed in terms of the impact of the site of delivery on all those issues, and how that will be, if it happens, and it will happen, how would that be addressed? Thank you.
Thank you. I think, did you say you would prefer to answer questions collectively, or rather than doing a one-on-one?
Whatever you choose, Madam Chair.
I
I
would.
may not remember them if I don't.
Oh, I thought you were taking notes.
Oh, yeah, but that doesn't mean.
All right, why don't you address that?
First, we're not privy to the letter that came from the Upper Falls Neighborhood Area Council today. So I'll respond to what I heard, but we didn't see the letter. The Oak Street loading dock has been used as such for at least the last 100 years. And I believe that Mr. Neville, when he had his job in the mill, and certainly my brother, when he had his job in the mill, used that loading dock on a regular basis. And Paulette's used it most recently for the dance school. The use of the loading dock for the 150, 175 residents of the building is anticipated to be significantly less than the use of the loading dock for the 700 or so commercial employees who would have been in the facility as an office. We did provide, at the Councilor Lobovitz's suggestion, a plan, a photo montage of the 9 current entrances and exits onto Oak Street, most of which are actually being removed or closed. The loading dock is to remain open. Others may be one-way emergency egresses if need be by code. So the reduction in the use of the loading dock from its prior uses and from the prior proposed use, we think is very substantial. We are opposed to people double parking on Oak Street and believe that the ordinances should be enforced. I note that there is no access to the front of the building on the village green. It had been proposed originally, but removed by this council in the course of its deliberations. So we think we have made improvements on that, on the whole facade and frontage along Oak Street, and hope that's satisfactory.
Thank you, Mr. Schlesinger.
I just wondered again about the enforcement of issues around double parking, blocking sidewalks, and obstructing traffic. If there's any or any consideration of having somebody on site who can direct traffic and advise drivers as to proper behavior, if you will.
We expect that on-site management will particularly manage the move-in and move-outs, which is largely, but that's a common management function. And the other deliveries will be probably done in a variety of ways. The move-in and move-outs are the big thing, but there will be nothing like kinds of deliveries of office furniture, office supplies, and copy machines, and all the kinds of things that go with the commercial development that we had before.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Lobovitz. Councillor Downs. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I'm procedural questions, and I do want to weigh in a little bit on the deliveries. Do you want me to make them, this is in my ward, do you want me to make the motion to close the public hearing, or do you want to keep that open?
I was thinking we would probably do that after the land use committee talks. So
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Fair enough. I assume things like Amazon deliveries and DoorDash deliveries would not go through the loading dock on Oak Street, but instead would come around inside the, down to Main Street and inside the main front door rather than around the back. That is a question for Attorney Schlesinger. And I am going to hold the rest of my comments on this. Oh, I have two other things. One was a question on the shuttle. The way it reads in the materials, it seems like the anticipation is that morning traffic, the shuttle will take people one direction, and evening traffic, they'll bring them back to Northland. And I'm wondering if that is how that is envisioned, or wouldn't the shuttle, should there be somebody who wants to get down Needham Street in the morning and return in the evening, could the shuttle not pick them up and do the reverse commute? And the other thing I was going to ask about was on e-bike charging. I believe that was a comment. And I think it was a good one, that having flexibility to allow e-bike charging for residents and visitors would be a very good practice. Also because one hopes that e-bikes, and now with e-bike rebates, folks will be doing a lot of their shorter trips, possibly even on the Greenway, by e-bike. Anyway, so I could get some answers, then
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Mr. Schlesinger.
On the Amazon deliveries, the address of the property will be 400 Main Street. So Amazon will be directed to go park across the village green and go in. I don't think that there doesn't seem to be a limit on the bad behavior of individuals in individual cases. But the policy will be that there may be a package delivery room. Some places, some apartments have it adjacent to a loading dock, a secured room possible. But we think that the DoorDash will largely be going to the street address. On the shuttle, there is a condition in the permit which I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it requires that we study the feasibility of additional stop on Needham Street. We are planning a stop at Charlemont Street for the housing development there, but there is a condition that requires us to look at it, and look at it we shall, because there aren't a lot of places to stop on Needham Street. On the question of the e-bike charging, this is an evolving situation. On my e-bike, and I do ride my e-bike, the battery is detachable. I bring it into the house and charge it and then put it back on. Some of them I understand are not. And I understand that some of them have occasionally been known to be hazardous. So I think we are going to monitor the technology on e-bike charging and do that which is first safe and second convenient.
Thank you, Mr. Schlesinger. President Laredo, yes?
So a few comments. Attorney Schlesinger, just confirm that work is still ongoing on the site?
Yes.
And there's been no delay or slowdown while you're going forward with the special permit, is there?
If the special permit had been in hand, events might have unfolded more expeditiously.
But you've been working continuously, right?
You didn't hear us complain.
Okay, I just want to say that because we are now in a large project on what I hope is our third and last meeting. I do think it's quite appropriate for us to be taking some time to do our work properly. And I just want to assure folks who may be watching that we granted this permit a number of years ago. You came before us rather recently to change it. And in that interim, you've been working diligently to move forward with the project, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, that's good to hear. And hopefully you'll continue to move forward with it. I just want to comment on a couple of things if I could. And I do appreciate Councilor Downs' comments because they reflected really my concerns. Look, I think as I said the other night, I think we ought to move forward on this. I think we ought to vote for it. I intend to vote in favor of it. I do think it's important when we do our council orders that we get it right. That's an important part of our job. So two things. One, on the delivery services, I think the world has changed a fair amount in regard to delivery services since we approved the special permit some 5+ years ago. I would like to see a little more teeth in our special permit that says something to the effect of the delivery type service. I'm not talking furniture delivery. I'm talking the Amazons, the Uber Eats, those folks we can use the right word, encouraged, directed, however we see fit to deliver within the site rather than their loading dock. I think that makes more sense. And that sounds like your intent anyways. The second issue, two other things. One, I share Attorney Schlesinger's view on the issue of e-bikes and the e-bike batteries. I really would hope we don't micromanage that type of an issue. I think we can leave that to the developer to develop and come up with an appropriate solution as technology exists and as technology changes. Third, on the transportation shuttle piece, I do want us to consider as we go about that, and we can look at that in the order, the fact that hopefully the shuttle will be used not just by residents going to the T, but employees of the businesses coming from the T. And in fact, I think that may actually be quite important. We do want to provide that. And so we may need to think about the hours that a business would operate. Retail business probably is going to open maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. So we ought to be thinking about that. We ought to also be thinking about what hours of the evening that shuttle would need to be available to be viable. Obviously, we're not going to capture everyone, but it is looking at it beyond the residents. Other than that, I'm prepared whenever you are, Madam Chair, to go through the order and try to put it together. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I meant to respond to Councilor Downs that the shuttle is not intended to be unidirectional. It is bidirectional, and there are different people who will take it for different purposes, different times.
Thank you. I too would very much like us to get to the council order, the draft order, because I think some of the questions that are coming up, we can help resolve by looking at the wording of that. But before we get to that, I want to be sure we've heard from any land use committee member who wants to speak now. Just that one. And I have two other councilors who are not on the land use committee who have been waiting to speak on Zoom. And then let's get to the council order, and you too, both of you. Okay. Yes, Councilor Leary first and Councilor Lucas next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is also my intent to vote for this. I think this is actually a wonderful project. I voted for it before. I understand the changes and why they've done it. There's just not the right market conditions for commercial space. But I do look forward to the 1.8 million annually that we will be getting from this project, which I wish we had now, believe me, as we go into the budget process. I also want to thank Councilor Greenberg for also adding another affordable 3-bedroom unit. She's very good that way. So very happy about that. I will save, I think, most of my comments as they come up. I do also want to get to the conditions. But generally speaking, I thought that this robust transportation demand management plan, it's in their interest to have it work well, and it's designed to reduce single occupant vehicle trips. And I think Councilor Lobovitz made an excellent suggestion about making sure we're working with commercial businesses, nonprofits, to make, and I think that's most appropriate for the work plan language that is not outside our purview. I don't think we want to micromanage that, but let's look at the conditions and see if there's a place for us to put that. There were many good comments in favor, and I supported all of them. I look forward to the new housing, and I also, one thing I really thought was so important with this project was Northland kicked off a big effort with the Green Newton Building Standards Committee to work on passive house design and dramatically reducing our carbon footprint. And this is a model for that, not only in reducing our carbon footprint, reducing costs to consumers, but the stormwater difference is amazing. This before was just a big driveway, paved area. There was no stormwater captured at all. So there's a lot of huge improvements going on here that I want to make sure that we keep in mind from when we initially approved this project prior. So let's see, my last comment is, Mr. Schlesinger, I bought my e-bike in 2020 and has not caught fire yet, but I will say that a secure space for them and away from residential areas is important. I keep mine in my garage. So I look forward to going through the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. I also was going to talk about the delays that President Laredo mentioned. So it's good to know that the project hasn't been delayed in any way by the city. It hasn't been delayed by the city council. It's nice to know that the petitioner is working on the project as they've gone through this proposed amendment to the site. What we really haven't had a long talk about yet is the shuttle. And reading in the memo, the petitioner said that they're going to operate the shuttle. I think it's 5 days a week, weekdays for 3.5 hours during peak times. I don't know what those peak times are. I would like to know. And is that 3.5 hours in the morning, 3.5 hours in the evening, or is it a combined 3.5 hours? That was not clear when I read the memo. So I guess we'll go over that when we do the council order, or if the petitioner could answer the question. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, or ask, is where on site, I couldn't find it in the backup, is where are the ride shares going to pick up individuals and where they're going to drop them off? I must have missed that. And, you know, it's disappointing. I'm disappointed that the petitioner isn't going to incorporate, again, some ground floor retail or office, or basically commercial use in building 1. It's going to be a medical office. I think that's good. I was hoping they could incorporate more. I understand that since 2020, when I read the report from Camoin, that there hasn't been any new office building construction or renovations basically since the start of COVID. I understand that, but I'm still disappointed that they're not going forward to maintain some of their original agreement with the city. The other thing we haven't talked about all, I think Councilor Leary mentioned it, and it's been in the memo twice, is the sustainability aspect of building 1. I'm still a little confused of what they are requesting a waiver for. So if they could answer that question, and again, when we go over the council order, I would like to hear from folks on the committee how they feel about this potential waiver. Those are my comments for, oh yeah, and then with respect to the shuttle, I forgot to mention this. With the shuttle, I would like to know if they're going to incorporate it on the weekends. I don't think that was mentioned in the memo, mainly because weekends, people shop, employees need to get to their work, and the whole idea is to get cars off of Needham Street. So the shuttle would need to be there so we could limit the car trips to and from the site, whether it's they're driving themselves or taking a ride share. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Still pushing forward towards the conditions, but again, I want to hear from everyone. I think we've heard from all of the Land Use Committee members who want to speak right now. We have 2 other counselors on Zoom who have their hands up. I saw Pam Wright's hand first, but I'm not sure I see Pam still on it. But Pam, if you're there, I want to give you the chance because yours was the first hand. And if not, I'm going to go.
I found information I was looking for, but one of the things that would be easier is if planning, they have on their website major projects, but none of the latest documents were in there. It's all the old documents. So it would be good if that was updated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor Getz, and then Greenberg.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I was thinking that I would focus simply, you know, for my first and preliminary questions was the loading dock, because I think that that's proximal to the Oak Street, Needham Street intersection. And I'm very concerned about double parking and it turning into a daily use kind of place, because I sort of feel that it needs to be, those other activities need to occur more centrally within the site. And I only see that doorway into the building serving to facilitate moving in of residents with you know, moving trucks, because I think that space internally would be able to take that capacity, but the in and outs and the multiple drop-offs from everything from Amazon to food delivery to mail service or UPS or whatever, I don't think that's an appropriate location for that kind of activity. And if it needs to be, there needs to be other designated placements, you know, in terms of the north side of the building or somewhere else within the site that serves those purposes, because that's not, you know, it's a, as I mentioned previously, potentially so close to the Oak Street and Needham Street intersection. That's a busy intersection at specific points and most points in the day, that I think that we need to do everything to try and alleviate any kind of traffic congestion or, you know, any problematic sort of traffic situations at that side of the building. I would hope that the mobility hub would serve as the designated spot for, you know, Uber, Lyft pickups. You know, the other end of Oak Street where the Petty Square intersection is, that's another potential place where we could see a lot of traffic congestion. So I'm concerned about, you know, it would be preferential to get the flow on Carden Lane into the site rather than the two-way traffic, because that will only complicate and further compound the traffic at Petty Square. And, you know, the Petty Square actual raised platform. And this is, you know, something that I think about quite a bit, you know, in terms of, I know it's Councilor Farrell who brought up the universally accessible parking spaces, you know, somewhere on the site, but I think that there's actually the space capacity internally in the mill building, you know, and is there an opportunity or a possibility of having 5 universally accessible parking spaces created within, further within, you know, because I've walked in that space and it's quite large. So I just don't know if it's possible, because I think that would potentially be a very good siting of those parking spaces. But that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Councillor Getz. And finally, Councillor Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I want to sincerely thank the petitioner for adding that affordable 3-bedroom unit at Tier 1. While it may not seem like a large increase in the overall number of affordable units, for the one family who will have the opportunity to call that apartment home, it will make a world of difference. So thank you again. And I urge the committee to approve this petition tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenberg. I miss your brevity on this committee. Okay, I'm going to give the petitioner a chance to answer any of those questions before we move on to the conditions. There were a couple of specific questions. I hope that this time you guys took notes on them and you can quickly address them.
In response to Councillor Lucas, the shuttle is 5 days, weekdays, we've said 3.5-hour shifts. We have not been more definitive about that, and that goes back to the discussion of trying to use trial and error to maximize the utilization of the shuttle. I think that the council could tell us it will run these hours, and then if it doesn't work, we have to come back to the council for another amendment of the special permit. It's in the morning and the evening, 3.5 in the morning, 3.5 in the evening. So I think that the framework of allowing it to be done and allowing the trial and error to work and understanding that it's a two-way shuttle, I think that that ought to work. On the question of the ride shares, we would expect the Ubers and Lyfts to go to the buildings, to the entrances of the buildings. We would expect we did put into the packet the shuttle route, which comes down Needham Street, in on Main Street, right on Lattice, and then out on Charlemont. So that's a circular one-way pattern. And we did have the garage entries shown on one of the colored plans and the circulation. As to the loading docks, the loading dock on Oak Street is adequate for the 100 units, the move-ins. It is adequate for the 700 or so people who would be working there if it were commercial space. I note that Oak Street is a public way. There is parking allowed on the north side of Oak Street. It's possible that someone might park there. And in terms of infractions, we are wholly in favor of law enforcement on the subject of infractions. So I think that I answered Councilor Getz's questions best I can, and I am in favor of putting the NewGov docs on the planning department website if they would care to do so.
Could you stay at that microphone for one more second? I think Councilor Lucas may have a follow-up question for you. Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. What about weekends on the shuttle?
I think that the primary goal of the shuttle is commuters, work commuters. I think that they're not opposed to trying to see if a shopper commuter will work. The experts, the provider is skeptical about that as to whether it would draw enough to make it worthwhile, although we certainly are aware of the employees. So I think that that's something that could be in the TDM work plan at some point.
Okay, well, I hope your clients consider that, because as you just said, it's commuters and you'll have workers commuting there and from there, especially, you know, if it's late at night and they have to get on the train. It's Saturday night, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they just shut down a restaurant. How are they going to get to the train? Are they going to walk the 1.5 miles? Or are they going to take an Uber?
Those are issues, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm asking is the late night doesn't have to run every 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But I think there should be something on the weekends for the employees who are going to be working there. I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We are going to move on. Councilor Downs, I think now would be a good time for the motions that you were thinking of making.
Thank you, Chair. I move to close the public hearing.
Let's vote on that first. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? Okay, public hearing is closed. And the next motion that you would like to make?
I would like to move approval.
Thank you. So moved. Now we'll take a look at the findings and conditions. I think planning can introduce it really well, but I'm just going to say what we're going to do when it comes to the conditions. This is a draft, is focus on the blue ones, which relate to this amendment, but all of them, including the previous ones, will be shown up in black on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I will be taking you all through the council order. Again, this is Katie Wewell from Planning. So I think the plan is to start here with the supplemental findings, but just the council order was included in the Friday packet. So the way the order is structured is first is the procedural background, then there's the original findings from the make it bigger. Roger that. Yep. And how is that? Or one more, maybe? All right. Okay. So the way the order is structured is, this is amending the previous approval. So we, before these supplemental findings, where we're going to begin, is the procedural background, the original findings of the approved project, Here we're at the supplemental findings. Following this will be conditions, and then following that are exhibits reference. So just to give the overall framework, I'm not going to read every finding aloud, but I will pause at each one so the committee can take some time to review. We're happy to make any edits. These are findings for the council to make. So we'll start at 37. Just want to note too, the changes to the order are the supplemental findings, largely removing references to office uses in the order, modifications to bring sustainability conditions up to date, the transportation condition revisions, and updates to plan referencing. So that's what you can expect to see in changes. Councilor Lucas, do you have a
Yeah.
comment?
Can I?
Councilor Lucas.
Thank you. On 37D, at the end, could you just, and excess in supply of available Class A office space within 2 miles of the site since 2020?
Sure. Is that, okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Shall I move on to 38? Yes.
Yep.
So this is the revisions of the project. Go to 39. I'll move along to 40. Let me know how this paces.
Speak up if.
I'll read along with you or in my head.
Unless it's really clear, it might be helpful if you just hit on what's the topic of them.
Sure.
Other than, we don't need to read through everyone.
Yeah, so these are, we've just gone through the standard special permit criteria. So we're at the last one of the standardized access to the site over streets. So this is looking at the, vehicular access and parking and the reference to the TDM. I think I see some counselors with their hands raised.
Councilor Downs.
Yeah, we were since we're looking at the 156 Oak Street Saco Petit Mill building, I wanted to respond to Councilor, my colleague from Ward 2 about keeping the sustainability or the energy efficiency of the building and the waiver requested. I think that while we'll waive some of the, as I understand it, the building can either be kept as a brick building, looking like it does as a historic building, which I support and value, or we could tear it down and have a more efficient building, but you don't get higher efficiency than what they're planning to do. Am I correct in that?
Sorry about that. So the zoning ordinance requires that projects over 20,000 square feet that require a special permit meet one of 3 sort of sustainability pathways, and it's LEED, Passive House, or Enterprise Green Communities. Now, this was written before energy codes advance, which now essentially supersede the need for those sustainability requirements. However, they are still in the zoning ordinance. Previously, the mill building was seeking a LEED core and shell certification, which is something that's available to buildings when you're just, as the property owner, doing work on the core and the shell of the building. So the exterior and the core,
and future tenants will fit out the interior spaces. My understanding is now that the mill building will no longer be office and will be residential, that lead option no longer applies. And there isn't another lead or passive house option that would also retain the historic character of the mill building, which is also required as part of a memorandum of agreement with the Mass Historical Commission. So that waiver is really just relating to the mill building. The rest of the site will be passive house certified for all the residential portions.
All right, thank you very much. That's roughly how I understood it. We either get the historic building or it will have to be torn down and something much more efficient put in place, but I think I support holding on to the old building.
So Councillor Downs, while we're here on number 40 of the supplemental findings, do you also have anything to say about this? We're going in order of what's on.
Yeah, I know on 40, I agree. There's going to be less traffic. And I want to remind my colleagues that in study after study, the parking is generally a generator of traffic. So if you want less traffic, you also want to have parking be a little less convenient. This, I think, will be, while not perfect in a parking demand management world, it is something that's worked on the north side with the Frio and Austin Street projects quite successfully, where there's separate payments for the parking and the apartments, and therefore fewer cars are brought to the project. And we know that that works fairly well. And I have no problem with the finding here in number 40.
Great, thank you. Let's move on, Ms. Wewell.
So we're kind of leaving these standard special permit findings and we're moving along to more free-form findings that support the project and, you know, provide rationale for supporting the project. So we'll move along to those. 41 says it'll expand quantity, diversity of housing options available in the city. 42, the Sacco Petty Mill building provides a unique opportunity for brick and beam style residential units. Mitigation payments remain the same due to, even though the project is, the scope is reduced. The revision of the project increases pervious area to the site. And lastly, the stormwater management system has been reviewed by the peer reviewer and planning, and the peer reviewer concludes the revisions to the project will not impact the approved stormwater system. So then I'll move along to the next set. So traffic studies and implementation have been appropriately prepared and reviewed by the city's peer reviewer and planning. Design elements related to the revision have been appropriately designed and also reviewed by our urban design peer reviewer and planning. The fiscal impact analysis has been appropriately prepared and reviewed. The economic analysis, shows demand for commercial office space in the area is weak, high vacancy rates, and an oversupply of lab impacting the office market. And the peer reviewer notes that no new office space has started since 2020 and does not expect the office market to recover for at least 6 to 10 years. Pause there if anyone has any notes. Nope. So this is a standard special permit criteria with regards to the sustainability section of the ordinance. So as Ms. Kyra just explained, the ordinance sort of is a little outdated in that it requires the 3 building systems, but projects of that size are kind of already under passive house due to the stretch energy code and building codes, which this project would seek an exemption for because of the adaptive reuse nature of the project, or the building 1, I'm sorry. So this section is looking back at some conditions of the original approval and just kind of giving an update as to those conditions because they've been, exercised or acted upon. So condition 3 of the original approval required that the 3 lots are combined, or a merger of the 3 lots, and that has been recorded. So that condition is satisfied due to the work that has already gone on the site. With respect to condition 4, the special permit site plan approval is, I think I should say, is vested. You can look at that later. For the purposes of utilizing the benefits of the change of zone authorized by the original approval, Council Order 426-18, because a building permit was issued for the construction of the splash park and as well as a retaining wall for Building 3. And then with respect to condition 5, the special permit was exercised due to the building permit. I think that might be duplicative, but we can also double check that. Or actually, no, this is exercise, so it's different. Sorry. So again, with the splash park and the building permit for the retaining wall, exercise the prior special permit. I think everyone has seen this before. It's where we outline the applicant, the petition number, the location, owner, address of owner. We've updated the square footages, the number of residential units, the number of parking spaces. So in this explanatory notes, that gives a lot of detail. We updated the number of parking spaces as well as that additional relief that we've all talked about around the sustainable section of the zoning ordinance. So now we are moving on to conditions. So many of these are the prior special permits conditions. They've just been updated. So here, this updates the plan set that we will reference later. Condition 6 allows the petitioner 6 years to apply for all building permits necessary to complete construction of the project. That was an edit from 5 years, so the petitioner has requested 6 years now. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Laredo, President Laredo.
So, Ms. Wewell, we had said they have to do everything within 5 years, and now it's been 5 years and we're saying an additional 6?
Yes.
That's not just a 1-year extension, that's a 6-year extension. So why are we doing that if they're part of the way through the project?
I think it may be helpful for the petitioner to respond to this one, but I think given that it has been 5 years, certainly that needs to be updated as 5 years from the prior date. I think we do want to give them a reasonable amount of time to complete this, given that there are uncertainties in the, construction world at the moment. And, we want to make sure this gets done in a reasonable time, but don't.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, but they've represented to us that they're working diligently and have been working diligently since the special permit was initially approved. They're now asking for literally more than double the time to complete. I'm fine with some extension here, don't get me wrong, but it strikes me that 6 years is really a very long time here. And I'm well aware of the uncertainty going on in the world right now regarding construction.
President, I think we've asked for a change from 5 to 6. Experience has shown that not just on this project, but on projects around the city, things are taking longer than you might expect. And in addition, this project is being built in sequences, not in phases, one phase, but a series of sequences. So the last buildings are scheduled to be out several years, and there's the occupancy and the rent up time. The time limit on the back end in which we would require an extension or a new permit is a risk. I don't know that the putting of 6 instead of 5 in here is such a risk, is a greater risk for the city than it is for the developer. So we would just as soon put that risk as far away as we can and request the change from 5 to 6.
Well, look, we all want this project to get done quickly. I don't want you coming back here, you know, in a year and a half, for example, and asking for more time. That's not the purpose of it. But I am concerned with now 5 years going to 11.
I think no one is more concerned than the folks over here. My files indicated that I started working on this project in 2012. And
Well, we're here to help you get it done.
right.
So,
But it would be naive to underestimate the time, particularly when things are sequenced and we have to do sequencing of 8 or 9 buildings over time. The infrastructure is largely in, which will be helpful, but it's a request. The request is, can we have the 5 changed to 6? For convenience.
I think your client wishes to speak. Whether you think that's a good idea or not, Attorney Schlesinger, I leave that to you.
Sorry, hi, Peter Standish, Northern Investment Corporation. I just wanted to clarify.
Could you speak in the
Sorry,
microphone,
I just
please?
wanted to clarify too, that from 2019, we went through a whole period of COVID. There were a lot of things that did slow down and sort of a normal process for design and construction. Okay, so we are going to build this in sequence, meaning we're going to build a number of buildings first, wait for those to get completed before we start the next set of buildings. So it would typically take 2.5 to 3 years to complete the first set of buildings. So that's our thinking behind allowing for
So
this. extra time.
in order to, could we have something in there at least that says you're going to complete some of the work within a certain time? What I don't want to do is see a project somehow start to sit vacant, okay?
We don't either.
I know that, but we've unfortunately had other projects in the city where we've acted, we've approved a special permit, and now they're just sitting there. So I'm just trying to come up with some language that accomplishes your goals, respect those, but have some oversight on the city's part. That's all.
No, I appreciate that. And I just, again, you know, in good faith, we've continued to work on this project. So it's not like we wanted it to sit either. So.
Look, I'm not going to belabor this. If my colleagues don't think it's important, I'm not going to press it. I appreciate the concerns here, but pardon?
Are you all set, President
I'll
Wade?
certainly defer to my colleagues.
I'm sure they will speak up if they have thoughts one way or the other. Lucas and then Farrell.
Okay, just a quick question. What happens if in 6 years the project isn't finished? Is there a penalty or?
Yeah, it's stated in the condition. So, you know, if the petitioner has not applied for all building permits necessary to complete construction of the project, then further construction is not authorized unless the petitioner seeks and receives an amendment to this special permit that extends the time for fulfilling this condition.
So it's basically if in 6 years the project isn't complete or they haven't filed or received their building permits, they have to come back for an additional extension of time?
Yes.
That's it? Okay, all right. So, I mean, we could change it, we could change it to 4 years, we could change it to 5 years. They would still have to come back. I don't want the project to sit there as the hole in the ground. So I'm fine with 6, really, I am. I don't see the harm.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Ditto. Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. Just when you say you're doing the project in sequences, is it possible for you to say In 2 years, we hope to have buildings 1 and 2 done. In 4 years, buildings 4, 5, and 6. I mean, something that we really all can say, there are some markers here. Is that possible?
Again, the people who are suffering from it not being built are over here. If it would help the council, we intend to apply for a building permit for Building 3 in 2025. And at that time, to bring you a really big check. I think we can agree, if it's significant, that we will apply for that building permit within 2 years.
You're going to commit in the order that you'll apply for the first building permit within 2 years?
Yes.
And that way we're going to get some money. Okay, I can certainly live with that. That makes sense, and that seems like a viable compromise.
Thank you.
All set. Let's move on.
Okay, so I think after this, it's going to be a while till something changes. I'm going to go to condition 19, as none of the ones in between are changing, and that will bring us to the affordability conditions. So here we have conditions related to affordability. This condition updates the number of affordable units. So as stated earlier, the project is increasing from 140 to 145 affordable housing units. 124 of those will be tier 1 units, so available to households earning at or below 80%. And then 21 of the units will be available to households between 80% AMI, but at or below 110%. So this is just updating the number of units. Yes.
Quick question, because I know we talked about this last night in ZAP. We're in the process of changing our IZ ordinance. Shouldn't we use the new formula and not this one? Or
So-
how does that play into it?
Well, Attorney Temple can answer that.
Because they exercised their original special permit, they're locked in at the version that was in effect at the time that they received their special permit.
Of the original special permit 2019?
Correct.
And this is it right here? Okay.
So does that mean if we eliminate tier 2, they still are compelled to do tier 2? Thank you.
So moving down, we will be going to condition.
Yes, we will. Could you just stop 1 sec? I just see
Oh, yes,
another
I'm
counselor's
sorry.
hand up. Sorry, Counselor Albright.
So one of the things that we've learned is that it's very hard to fill the tier 2 units. So if it's in our interest to ask them to change to the new ordinance when it is passed, can we do that, Mr. Temple? If it's in our interest and in their interest.
They could have a choice.
I mean, in theory, you could ask, we could not require them, but are you talking about a new ordinance that is not in effect right now?
Yeah, I mean, what we are discussing is eliminating the tier 2 units because there's so many problems attached to them and for the developer and for the city. So I'm wondering if it's in the future, once we have a new ordinance, can we come back to them and ask them?
I wouldn't recommend it. They wouldn't be required to comply with it. And I wouldn't want to put anything in the board order now in regards to a future ordinance
I
that
totally
neither side knows what the details of it are going to be.
Right. Now, I'm not asking for it to go in now. I'm just wondering if it's possible later.
It's certainly possible if there's a change and the city wants to approach Northland about coming in for an amendment to come into compliance with it voluntarily. If it makes sense for both sides, there's a scenario where that happens, I think.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're saying if they choose to do that later, if it's to their advantage, could they come back and ask for that? Or are they stuck doing tier 2 forever? So yes, it sounds like they could. Great. I'm sorry. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Wheel.
No, that's good. So condition 21 sets forth the bedroom mix of the inclusionary units. So we've updated that there to reflect those increases and also note the increase in the 3-bedroom that was elected by the petitioner. And then we will move on, if there's no questions, to, oh, I just want to take a moment that we've updated the references from DHCD to EOHLC to reflect the appropriate state agency in all of the housing conditions. So now we will move to condition 36. This updates, the number of memoranda from the petitioner and the revised plan set date on file. Now we'll move to condition 48. So this was submitted by the petitioner to changes of the undergrounding utility or municipal utility overhead service utility lines along the project's frontage. They have added 2 years after issuance of the last temporary residential unit occupancy. Prior to that, it was at the issuance of the last temporary residential certificate of occupancy. So if the petitioner wants to elaborate on that, unless the council has any questions.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, President Laredo.
I just want to ask the rationale for that change, the extra 2 years.
Dealing with Eversource on these power lines would be funny if it were funny, but it's not. Every single step of this process has been excruciating in time, effort, and money. They've done a great job of getting the conduits underground along Needham Street. The water line has been rerouted. It now comes down Tower Road across the site and out Oak Street. But getting to the part of being done, they show the telephone poles in the bike lane. This is the thing.
I don't think you have to say any more, Attorney Schlesinger. I think we've seen what the poles and the bike lanes look like right now. I don't think anyone's particularly happy about that. We'll leave it at that. I'm sure the petitioner's not either.
3 of us are on public facilities and deal with the utility companies and the delays and the communication difficulties constantly. So we hear you. Okay.
Okay, so let's move along to condition 51. This is largely due to the change of the site near the Greenway. So those elimination of buildings 9 through 12 for the surface parking facility. So this condition originally contemplated the townhouse units, as you can see crossed out. So we've adjusted that to allow for fencing or structural, landscaping between the parking area and the Greenway. So that is just an update that corresponds with the site plan. And then condition around sustainability. This, as described earlier, is reflecting the change from building 1 of office to residential. And I think as Ms. Kyra explained earlier, it's due to, no longer being appropriate for lead, core, and shell. And now the exemption from the sustainability provisions allows a mill building to, retain the character without altering the building envelope and maintain their memorandum of agreement from the Mass Historical Commission without really significantly altering the exterior of the building. So, 53 reflects that. 55 has been intentionally deleted because it's now been replaced by a passive house for all buildings except building 1. Condition 56 has been updated to also reflect passive house for the newly constructed buildings. And then it, acknowledges that they will pursue an exemption from the Mass Building Energy Code's passive house requirements for the mill building at Oak Street due to the historic nature of the building. And then the following condition also updates, that. Okay, now we've come to the traffic conditions. So a lot of the traffic conditions have, struck the office language. And I'll pause.
Hold on for a second.
Yes.
There's still a medical office.
There is. I think that the petitioner can respond to this, but I believe that was built in as sort of a placeholder to allow the use and the parking for that. But I'll let the petitioner explain that.
And just next time, it helps if you raise your hand instead of going directly to planning. Thank you.
Yes, it was it's a placeholder to allow for a parking demand that might not fit the other boxes. Medical office, you get a credit for having 25 parking spaces required for that. So if there's some other need that needs it, it'll be available. And if it's a medical office, that's good too.
Thank you. All set? Counselor Lucas?
Oh, yeah,
Yep,
sorry,
okay.
yeah. Oh.
Okay, and I'll pause here at E because this is the first mention of the change to the TDM investment amount of what was previously 1.5 million and has now been proposed to be reduced to 200,000.
Yes, President Laredo.
That strikes me as quite the significant reduction. I mean, I certainly understand some reduction here, but you're taking it from a very significant commitment to provide additional funding here to something that's, I don't want to say negligible, but close to that. Why is planning okay with that decrease?
So we're comfortable with it because without the office, the number of trips really does reduce significantly. And they still need to show, they still need to come in and do the counts and show every year that they are complying. And we do have ability to work with them to find, the best methods possible for reducing the number of trips. And our understanding is that this really was the number plus the sort of unlimited cap and the contract with the city was really problematic for lenders.
Well, wait a minute. When we approved this a bunch of years ago, we put in the $1.5 million for a reason, because we are quite concerned about the ability to make sure that we were going to get the transportation demand management that we needed. So you're now saying the risk to them is lower because there's not going to be the office demand. I get that. That doesn't justify to me at all why you reduce this number from 1.2 million or 1.5 million to 200,000. So I'm not following the logic here. Other than the developer obviously doesn't want to have that potential severe penalty. If I were them, I wouldn't either. But the whole purpose of this language was to provide sufficient tools for the planning department to work with the developer to achieve the TDM that we want. And I'm not in favor of that kind of reduction at all.
Mr. Schlesinger, I believe you explained this to me in terms of the reduction in the number of trips per day, per week, per year justified this change in cost, but perhaps you could directly respond to the issue that President Laredo was raising.
Thank you. And we highlighted this in our presentation, and I mentioned it. I highlighted it in my talk this evening. So it's been out there. The metric for the $1.5 million, how did it come up? The metric was the cost of the shuttle as it was then proposed at the 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. The cost in that was about $1.5 million. So that was a number that was floating out there. The number that we have asked for is the comparable number for today, which is the amount of the projected cost of the shuttle element, that element of the TDM plan. The second, so that's the rationale for the number, where the roots of it. The second thing is that the number itself isn't a good number because it's not tied to anything and it's highly punitive. It's a punitive number. And in the discussions that were had over the past 5 years, that number doesn't work because the penalty is too big. However, the third,
For you, because the penalty's big, might work
The-
for us.
the third point, well, no, you don't want a penalty. I'll explain that later. The third reason is that under condition 64, which we'll get to, 64A, no, 64. Under condition 64, the number goes up by the proportion that we're over. So which one is that? Is that 64 what?
65.
65,
65.
65A. The 200,000 is only 200,000 if it works. If it doesn't work, then the number goes up indefinitely and it is an uncapped number. Now, normally, nobody on this side of the podium would take an uncapped exposure for anything, but we recognize the fact that the language was in the prior order. So we'd like to use the same metric as before, which is 200,000, the cost of the shuttle, allow it to float upwards if we still can't make it, and there's no cap on it. And I think that it is in fact, the $1.5 million works in the idea, in the eyes of a lender as a fixed and then increasing an uncapped cost. So it is in fact a penalty, which we asked for because we can't live with what we had.
Planning, did you have anything more? Counselor Lobovitz.
I'm not clear on what would drive the number higher. Can you explain that? I'm just missing that.
You said there's no cap.
Right.
Oh, the number under condition 65 says that if you're over the maximum traffic generation by 10%, then the number 200,000 goes up by 10%. You're over by 100%, it's 400,000. So that number does not have a cap to it, which is its own problem, but I think we've agreed to that. But the starting number of $1.5 million is a penalty which is too large, and we can't go with it.
So the point is that there's a proportionality between the impact and the amount of money
Yes, yes.
that you're willing to spend.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We're back. Oh. Counselor Farrow.
Not having been part of the earlier conversations, what would cause you to fail to achieve the maximum trip count? Just out of curiosity, how does that work?
A plainly unknown recurring black swan event. Too many cars,
Too many cars.
too much popularity.
I'm just trying to follow up here, okay? So your initial plan for your TDM shuttle was to spend $1.5 million a year?
Yes,
Okay. That's now been reduced to 200,000 a year.
yes,
All right, so you've saved $1.3 million in annual costs every year by virtue of this revised plan.
been waiting for that comment.
Pardon?
Yes, and we are losing very significant revenue from a much smaller project, minus 160,000
You
square.
know, I'm not privy to your numbers. You haven't shared them with me. I'll take that as a given. But I can look and see that you're expending $1.3 million less on TDM. I understand that you're concerned about not having the same level of penalty when you're having a significantly lower expenditure. But it strikes me that we're going down way too far. And
Those aren't equal dollars, Mr. President. We also have a program of the MBTA bus write-downs. We have a variety of other mechanisms within the TDM program of ride shares and other things, items which might cost money. So I don't think it's a dollar for dollar trade-off. We do think, however, that the number of $1.5 million is it's a penalty that the project can't stand. I have to say that that's our feeling on it.
the scope of this project is how much it's going to cost to develop?
A lot
100 million?
or more.
Okay. Several hundred million?
Yes.
All right, we're talking less than 0.25%, right?
No, that's not it because it's an annual and it's uncapped on the increase. So if we happen to be over by 20%, the $1.5 million becomes $1.8 million and it goes on forever. It could be uncapped.
Yeah, but we're not, no one's going to be looking, if you can reduce the transportation demand with the expenditure of $50,000, that's going to be fine. No one's going to require you to spend $1.5 million.
Except that the papers will. And the people who read these things on behalf of the lenders don't see odds. They see.
Oh, I understand how that works. Okay. I understand they look at worst case scenario contingencies. That's their job. I'm not comfortable with going down to $200,000. I think we should have a number that's closer to $500,000 or $600,000 here. I think that gives you significant relief, but ensures that we get what we're looking for.
Well, if we're trying to resolve these as we go through it, right here is a stopping point where we have to talk about this. I'd like to hear from other people. What I understand is the difference that President Laredo is mentioning of a $1.3 million less investment. What I hear Mr. Schlesinger say is it is one small way they're trying to make up for deficits in other parts of the project, if I'm saying that correctly, even though it's like apples to oranges money-wise. Is there any other conversation on this amount so that we can move on to another condition?
While you're discussing, Madam Chair, we'll
Yes, I see that.
give some thought to what Councilor Laredo said and look at the totality of the conditions and see if there's something in the totality.
Okay, so maybe we'll come back to it. Councilor Leary.
Well, I think it's helpful to go to the language in number 65, really, to see the totality of this.
We are in 65.
Oh, no, I don't see it on,
Oh, I'm looking at 65.
but
Okay.
I understand what President Laredo is saying about that, but I'm also sympathetic to what the petitioner is saying. It is a significantly reduced project. And I know it's in their interest to do a robust transit management plan and to keep those trips under that amount before this would kick in. I just don't know what that number is. Why the 200,000 is significantly reduced. What is the right number? I mean, President Laredo threw out 500,000 or 600,000. How did you come to that? And, you know, looking at the amount that this project has been reduced, which is very significant, I do think makes a reduction, you know, reasonable.
May I respond through the chair to that?
Yes.
So, Councilor Leary, it's not an exact science, okay? I admit that. But we are letting the petitioner here engage in a very significant reduction of their transportation demand management obligation, in part because we don't have office space. That's understandable. But this has always been a concern with this project, which is not transit-oriented development. It's a mile from the T. So I think it's in our collective interest to make sure that there's some incentive to get the transportation demand right. I'm sympathetic to what the petitioner is saying. I understand when they go to a lender that $1.5 million contingency would be significant. That's why I'm suggesting a greatly reduced amount of $500,000 still gives us plenty of incentive to get it right, but really takes their liability down significantly. And I'm sorry, on a project that is going to cost many, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars to develop, a $500,000 potential liability over a bunch of years, I just don't see that as an enormous risk.
Madam Chair,
Chair. Oh.
Yes, Mr. Schlesinger.
we are here, actually, I'd like to pick up on what President Laredo said. We're here allocating risk. And I think I understand that that's what this discussion is. I would like to propose a reallocation of the risk to be that the minimum amount or the amount specified for remediation be, as you suggested, $500,000. But instead of there being no maximum cap, that the cap be $1 million.
You know, $1 million per year, or $1 million over the life of the project? Million a year, right?
Yes.
All right. I think that's a reasonable compromise. I'd rather, my sense is we're unlikely to have an enormous downside here. We're more likely to be off by some amount. I think that puts, that's an appropriate balance of the risks, it seems to me.
I have 3 counselors whose hands are up, Lucas, Lobovitz, and Downs. What I would like to ask you all is, can we move on to 65, which is where I actually thought we were, as we try and move forward through this, or are your questions pre-number 65? Lucas, you're first, so I'll ask you.
Thank you, Chair. It's related to both because they're connected, but
So would you like us to move on before we take your question, or would you like us to take your question before we move on?
I was going to make a comment on the 200,000, but they've changed it.
They
But
did.
I was just going to say that, you know, I did the math. It's an 87% reduction to go from 1.5 to 200,000. But the project isn't getting, you know, 87% smaller. The traffic trips are not getting 87% smaller. The revenue isn't, I presume, not 87% smaller. So the $200,000 was way, way too low. I'm happy that it's now at 500,000 minimum a year. Is that correct? 500,000 minimum a year, and it could go up to $1 million per year. I think that is fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Councilor Lobovitz.
Oh, the issue has been resolved. I was just going to say we should wait for the petitioner to respond to
I was
President Laredo, which they have, and I fully support the change. Thank you.
trying to give them time, and they came up with that all on their own, which was excellent. Councilor Downs?
So I understand the petitioner's skittishness about taking on the original conditions. I thought we actually, this council in 2019 put in pretty incredible deal for the city in there with a minimum of 1.5 million should trips get out of hand and no ceiling. But I think what we just did was we raised the floor and imposed a ceiling. I'm not sure that, and yes, it's about risk. I think my preference would be to stick with the lower floor and the possibility of more money going to fix the problem should it be needed, and hopefully it won't be, than putting on a ceiling.
Thank you. Okay, let's do 65.
So I did scroll down to 65 because I think they wanted to see.
We were looking at those numbers, so I
structure.
thought we
Yeah,
sort of gotten there.
So we're on 65 now, and I think I've made those edits, but I would like to take a moment to go to 64 so we don't lose it. It's just the approval of the TDM work plan. So this has been updated to submit to reflect the latest revision. There's a change they've made to the TDM coordinator due to the loss of office. I also wanted to just pause here because I think Councilor Lobovitz had proposed language to the TDM work plan. So if the petitioner were to agree to that, this date would change with that revised TDM plan.
That would be wonderful if they agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Both of you.
See what they say.
It takes a team. Okay. I'm not sure we resolve between what Mr. Schlesinger offered on behalf of the team, what Councilor President Laredo mentioned, and then Councilor Downs had an alternative suggestion. Do any other members of the Land Use Committee have thoughts on that? I personally am fine with the counter offer, if we'll call it that, from Mr. Schlesinger for $500,000 and 1 million per year. That would be fine with me, especially if planning is fine with that, and see what, if other counselors are fine with that.
Is planning comfortable with that cap? I mean, it strikes me pretty unlikely that we'd ever be in a situation where we're going from $200,000 expenditure to, $1 million expenditure.
Agreed. We're comfortable with that.
Okay.
Great.
Good. I just want to make sure that our professionals here are on board with that. Thanks.
I think we would have heard from them. I kept glancing over. I think it's good. Thank you for clarifying that though, Ms. Kyra. Okay.
So the balance of after 65 of the traffic conditions remain the same aside from eliminating the reference to office. And they've also accounted for or clarified, events in the, if the monitoring report determines that statewide trip count exceeds either of these maximums by more than 20%, to account for variations in commercial uses, and they've added events and trips generated by public spaces. That seems pretty straightforward.
So take you up to 78 and?
Yep. Yep, and then the next revision would be at condition 78. And that brings us to the building permit condition. So these conditions take effect prior to the issuance of any building permit. So, many they've done already, recorded the council order, filed it. And so we will move to N of the building permit condition. So this also just reflects the change in the green building standard from LEED to passive house and reflects that in here. So then moving along to 79, this is conditions prior to the issuance of any occupancy permits. So the conditions that have been impacted here, I think this is a minor cleanup one, is L. Instead of mill rock feature, it's mill race feature. And then moving to Q also reflects the change in the green building program. I think that's it. Oh, and moving along to the plans, this has also been amended to remove references to old plans and insert later references to new plans where the project has been amended. So that is also reflected in Exhibit A. And then Exhibit B references the Off-Site Transportation Mitigation Fund. There are no changes, so that stays the same.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion? Yes, Counselor Lobovitz.
I want to go back to the delivery situation and the petitioner mentioned that the property manager, I'm not sure the proper
TDM
title.
Coordinator? Oh.
I'm sorry?
No, the property manager who would help with people moving in and out? Is that what
Yes.
you're referring to?
Yes, that person, whoever that is, and what, I don't know exactly what their title is. But whatever that title is, I wondered whether we should make sure that any resident who observes a problem with the loading dock in terms of double parking, blocking sidewalks, et cetera, we should make that person's contact information publicly available so that that can be reported to that person if they're not on site at the time to address that. I don't know if there's a way to include that somewhere, but I think that would be helpful to the public. Thank you.
We see this a lot in projects, excuse me, where there is a person. Is that something your team has thought about, having a contact person for, calling for, I see your hand up. Okay, I'd just like to hear from them first, and then I'll come back to the order of hands I have written down. Good question. If you don't want to answer that right this second, I'm going to go to President Laredo.
If I can try to address both Counselor Lobovitz's concerns and try to help the petitioner a little bit here too. What I'd suggest is we add something like a condition that says petitioner shall use reasonable good faith efforts to in direct deliveries, Amazon, those types of deliveries. You can get the exact wording, using the main street address and provide an appropriate contact person should there be issues with improper use of delivery loading docks. Something of that nature that gives you some flexibility, but makes it clear in our order that there's an intent. Does that work, Attorney Schlesinger?
That will work. Mr. President.
Okay.
Thank you, President Laredo. Thank you, Mr. Schlesinger.
Where would that be located, Chair, or planning? Where would we?
Where
would that
wording
wording
be?
Yeah, where would that be inserted?
We'll look at that tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you. All set, President Laredo? Yes, I think so. Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. Question for planning. Question for planning. There we are. Okay. Oh, you were talking. That's fine. That's okay. You're allowed to do that. I'm not here. When we were going over the council order, we didn't touch I&I and all. And with the revisions to the site, does that need to be looked at again?
No, so they've committed to providing the same amount of mitigation.
Oh,
It was one in black that we don't have.
okay,
to
yeah,
think
I was
about.
asking why, but thank you.
All set.
All right.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, there is a motion on the floor by Counselor Downs to approve this motion. Why don't we take a roll call vote?
Counselor Downs,
Wait, we couldn't hear you, Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Thank you.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
and Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
It's not even 10 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned. Thank you. Forward motion.